we've got some receiving props we wanted to go through with the San Francisco 49ers specifically. And it's partly because we have this Deebo Samuel news where, in my opinion, and we can all speak to this, Buckets in particular, I don't think Deebo Samuel's going to play. That's just what I'm speculating right now. And even if he does, I don't think he's really going to be as involved as San Francisco would want him to be. With that in mind, and Maestro, I'm going to start with you. We've got a pretty inflated prop with all of these guys, but it's for good reason. Brandon Ayuk, 80.5 here at BetMGM. George Kittle, 60.5 yards at BetMGM. And Christian McCaffrey, we're talking receiving yards here, 37.5 yards. What's your take on any of these three? Do you like an under a lot? Do you like an over a lot?
I can't go on any of these guys, given that the Lions have given up at least 345 passing yards the past 5 games. And now you're potentially taking out Deebo Samuel, who did not practice yesterday, was sprinting, but supposedly still in a lot of pain. They haven't posted Juwan Jennings. That's going to be really interesting when they try to come up with a number for him. But I'm already on record from the NFL show that we recorded on Tuesday with Christian McCaffrey over 37.5. The 2 games that he played when Deebo didn't play, 64 receiving yards and 51 receiving yards. And even if Deebo plays, we do expect him to be somewhat limited. So I definitely love CMC over. And on this track, on this slate, I would go with Ayuk, but I may go on catches. You can get plus 125 at over 5.5 catches. You just look at what number 1 wideouts have done to the Lions lately. Mike Evans absolutely went off. They've all been going off, but I kind of like the receptions a little bit better than the yards.
By the way, Maestro, speaking of your show yesterday, CID is in the chat. He says, Larry, great NFL show yesterday. I believe that was you, Mike McClure, and RJ White. That is in everybody's feed right now. It's in your podcast feed. It's up on YouTube. So check that show out because they go through all of their angles. And you're going to have some unique angles when you got Maestro, RJ White, and Mike McClure on the same show. If memory serves, there was some KC talk from Mike McClure that was very convincing, Maestro, and there was some talk on the Baltimore Ravens that was very convincing too. And that's just one of the games, the game that we're not talking about right now. But again, that one's in your feed. I highly encourage you to watch that. All right, Proppy, let's talk about this because one thing people should know, because a lot of times when I look at this yardage for the primary receivers, and Maestro said it, Juwan Jennings, he's not out. Ray McLeod, he'll probably have a prop. I don't know if Ronnie Bell's going to be active, but there are some receivers where the props aren't out yet. But when you look at the passing yards prop for Brock Purdy, I mean, everybody should know what that prop is when you're looking at receiving yards. That's one thing you want to cross-reference. It's around 275 yards. So it does make sense that the Lions' share would go to these 3. But with all that said, these are inflated to some degree because of the Deebo factor. For me, the one that I think I'm looking at the most, believe it or not, is the inflated yards of George Kittle. I kind of like the over there, even though it's kind of high. What do you like out of these 3 guys?
Yeah, first and foremost, these lines would not be this high if Deebo Samuel was going to play. So I think you can basically count on him being inactive for this game. These lines would look differently, even if he was going to be active in a decoy role. But yeah, they make sense considering the opponent, Detroit being a significant pass funnel. They bleed a tremendous amount of production to opposing number 1 wide receivers as well. I believe it's either 4 or 5 consecutive games that the wide receiver 1 has gone for at least 145 yards against this Detroit pass defense, which has really struggled. They just don't double team opposing number 1 wide receivers. And then without Deebo Samuel on the field, that just really condenses the target distribution that much more. So this does really set up nicely for Brandon Ayuk to have a big game. I also think George Kittle can go over this total as well, considering how poor Detroit is against opposing tight ends, how difficult it is for them to cover the middle of the field. And then furthermore, if we look at George Kittle's home and road splits, he has been extremely productive at home this season, where he just tends to play well in these high leverage spots. My one concern would be Brian Branch, really Detroit's best defensive back. He may have the duty of picking up George Kittle for this game. He has proven to be an all-pro caliber, or at least a Pro Bowl caliber player as a rookie. But yeah, like Brandon Ayuk quite a bit. I think honestly, all 3 of these guys can go over these totals without Deebo, because there's just 3 of them are going to be funneled a tremendous amount of targets. I personally rank it Ayuk, Kittle, McCaffrey in that order, though.
Very interesting. Buckets, I'm going to come to you in a second. I need you to pick one of these guys for an over and an under. But did you catch what Proppy said in the middle of that soliloquy? It was beautiful. He said, furthermore. If you want to catch a little bit more of the furthermore, Proppy, this question is for you before I go to Buckets. You have a show tomorrow at 4:00, correct?
I do indeed. Well, we'll be breaking down both these games at length, and we'll be discussing, obviously, almost a full hour of props. So, yeah, can't wait to do that with Uncle Dave, Richard, and EC as well.